Before we begin, I want to remind everybody attending this evening's meeting in person that the meeting is being recorded and that this room is equipped with microphones throughout that will pick up any talking. So please refrain from having sidebar discussions that you do not wish for the microphones to record. So I will open the city council meeting of September 16th, 2024. It is 6 p.m. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, would the clerk please call the roll?
Potato,
Here.
Bowman,
Here.
Farragut,
Here.
Cole,
Here.
Olfers.
Here. Here.
Right, they're all here. Consent agenda.
Mayor, would you like to do the invocation?
What's that?
Would you like to do the invocation?
Invocation. There we go. Find it. So today we have Pastor Luke Wilbanks from Gospel Life for our invocation.
Do you want me to come up here?
Yes, please.
I was once a council member myself, so I commend you for taking a role that gets very little compliments and nothing but complaints. So
Sir, can you please hit that button?
press the button.
Yes, thank you.
You got it?
So you excuse my going right over you?
Oh, yeah, it happened all the time.
All right.
Yeah. Well, okay. Father God, first of all, we just want to thank you for your grace and mercy and your love towards us. Thank you for sending your son Jesus to just prove how much you do love us. And your word says that you uphold the universe by the word of your power. And that means that Sumner is small potatoes for you. And so you uphold this city, these people on the council and all the citizens, the mayor. And so we just pray and ask your grace upon us. Would you please give us the gift of humility? Would you please help us to have a heart that longs to serve others first? That's how Jesus came, not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. So help us to point to the ones whose image we are created in and serve this community for their good, for your glory and the joy of all of these people. But thank you for your grace on us tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Will the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item number 1, White River Restoration Phase 1, CIP 14-10, change order 1. Item 2, Main and Wood intersection improvements, consultant agreement supplement. Item 3, resolution number 1699, EV charging cameras grant acceptance. Item number 4, professional service contract amendment number 2, sound inspections. Item 5, approval of the minutes from the September 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting and the special study session and the September 9th, 2024 study session. Item 6, approval of the checks and electronic payments in the amount of $1,199,183.18.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cole, would you please make a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Yes, I move to adopt the consent agenda of today, September 16th, 2024.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Bowman. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Would any member like to remove an item? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed? Passes. Unanimous. Right. We have no public hearing tonight. And we have one item on regular business, and it is unfinished business, ordinance number 2894, amending Sumner Municipal Code 5.08 utility taxes. Councilmember Elfers, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2894, amending Sumner Municipal Code 5.08 utility taxes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second, Councilmember Rankin. I call on Administrator Jeff Stephens.
Hi, good evening. I'm to get my presentation up. So tonight we'll be discussing ordinance 2894. This was previously reviewed with council back in August. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the ordinance and then provide you all with some additional information that we've gotten since the last meeting. Sumner Municipal Code establishes a 6% private utility tax. So this is a 6% tax on telephone businesses operating in town, gas utility and electric utilities. These are billed and collected by these private utility companies and then remitted to the city of Sumner. These receipts are then entered into the city's general fund. So this is general fund revenue. Our current code includes an abatement provision for charges of more than $1,500 per month are not subject to the tax. This ordinance proposes removing that abatement. The abatement was originally established in 1988, and at that point in time, the cutoff was charges above $750. Staff is unaware of what led to the abatement going into place back then. We assume it probably had some tie to a particular business or industry. The abatement was then updated in 2008 to be at the current rate of charges over $1,500. At the time, staff asked around and we believe that this abatement provision was unique to Sumner. It discourages conservation, and removing the abatement would have no impact on any customer who currently has a utility bill or telephone bill less than $1,500 a month. And that's individual utility as opposed to a combined PSE gas and electric bill. So on the gas and electric front, Council Member Elfer's suggestion, we reached out to Puget Sound Energy to get some provided estimated impacts if this abatement was to go away. On the electric side, it would affect roughly 153 customers in town and provide $783,989 in additional revenue to the general fund, which is about a 59% increase in that one category alone. On the gas side, it would impact about 48 customers and bring roughly $179,000 of additional revenue to the general fund. And that's about a 44% increase over what we're currently collecting. We asked PSC, is this abatement provision unique to us? And it is. Algona, Roy, and Toledo are the only other PSC cities with similar abatements to us. We also asked about an effective date and rate increases. And Puget Sound Energy said that they like to provide a 60-day notice period to their customers and with a rate change such as this. So with that, we've changed the effective date on this ordinance from October 1st and pushed it all the way out to January 1st, 2025, which would provide a little over 100 days notice. Puget Sound Energy also said that they were happy to work with the city in partnering with us to notify customers should this ordinance pass. This also would impact, as I mentioned, telephone tax collections, similar provision. We have roughly 75 different telephone taxpayers throughout the city, so it's a little bit harder to contact them and get individual information, but we would have to do that over the same time period as well. Likely little impact on the revenue side as there aren't a lot of individual telephone taxpayers that have a bill in excess of $1,500. But we do feel that it is important to kind of keep the rates the same across all three of these categories. This latest version of this ordinance with these updated numbers was presented to Finance Committee last week, and it received a due pass from the committee. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and maybe I'll just stop. Well, I'll leave it up in case I have to go back to something, so.
All right, well. Go ahead.
So when you're talking about customers, are you talking about both private and business customers?
So this would just be in Puget Sound Energy's customer base inside the city of Sumner. We don't have any details about which customers would be impacted. I know, for instance, of the 153 electric customers, the city probably accounts for about 4 or 5 of those. You think City Hall, the shops, we have a couple large accounts at the wastewater treatment plant that would be paying this tax.
But like for the Puget Sound Energy, you don't know. I mean, but this would apply to everybody, whether you're an individual private citizen or if you're a company.
It would apply to anybody as long as your utility bill is over $1,500. If it's less, I'm assuming your utility bill is less than that, I wouldn't have any impact to you, but it would apply to you should you decide you want to leave your lights
Okay,
all the time.
thank you. All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Pat.
And I have a question just for a clarifying question for the public. So if you, and I don't know if you really know this answer, but what impact will that have if someone has a $1,500 bill and say it's going to be 3,000, it'll be twice as much? Do you know about how much of an increase someone might have with PSE?
Yeah, so if you, currently it's $1,500. If your bill was $3,000,
Mhm.
you'd pay an additional 6% tax on that second $1,500. That's what, 66 bucks?
Thank you. Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, since this has been on the council on August 19th, we won't be taking any public comment. You got one? Do you have a comment?
I do have a comment.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
First of all, I want to thank you for the city for coming up with this, and I appreciate the extra time to kind of get the information from PSC. I just wanted to just reiterate a couple things. I think, we got the information in August and we didn't have a lot of data, so I really appreciate that PSC gave us information. Obviously, it's not proprietary, so we don't know which businesses this impacts. I did just want to point out it's over 10% of the businesses. I think we got 1,400 and some change in number of businesses in Sumner city limits, and then this is 150. So it's a 10% of most likely some of the bigger businesses because it's bigger spaces, and businesses that I know that it impacts are going to be some of the ones that we really appreciate as a community, including the old cannery's got a lot of space they're heating, so that's a big bit. They're gonna see a significant increase in their bill. And then I think like the YMCA, the city of Sumner. So I just wanted some of the areas with big areas. There's also some big businesses in the industrial area that'll be impacted. So I just wanted to just make sure that we realize one of the things I'm going to object to this, not because I think it's bad to get rid of this abatement. I do think that I think the process should have been done better. I think we should have had due diligence before we brought this forward in August, and I think we should have given an opportunity for a public hearing on this issue so that businesses could come and comment before it. I know we're going to give them notice after the changes happen, so PSE is going to do that. But I'm going to vote no just because I object to the fact that I think that with this significant of impact to the businesses in Sumner, I feel like we did not give them enough notice. But I do think it's a good thing to get rid of. The general fund is always going to be short on money. It looks like going forward, streets are very expensive. So again, I just wanted to make sure I communicated that. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Elfers,
No.
Cole,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Teto,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Thurgett.
Yes.
Passes 5-1. Okay, next on our list, public comment. Michelle, will you please read the rules for public comment?
The public comment period is your opportunity to speak to the council on issues that are not on the agenda. As the clerk calls your name and address, please approach the podium and you do have 3 minutes. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is the council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. The council will not be answering questions and you may be directed to a staff member. And we do have one person who has signed up for public comment tonight, Mayor Hayden, Tina Burnett, 228 Sumner Avenue. Yes, you do. Thank you.
All right, first, I don't normally read my things. First, I'd like to offer condolences to the families of the victims of violence in two separate tragic incidents in our area this weekend. This is a reminder of how important our area law enforcement is and what a hard job they have. And I want to say thank you to them. I can't imagine how hard it is on them to roll up to a scene like that with dead bodies shot up. I just thank you for your everything you do. Secondly, I want to talk about the community survey. The community survey revealed that far more people support renovating the Ryan House with taxpayer dollars than support Heritage Park. This despite the fact that the Friends of the Ryan House and supporters have given up on the city providing any financial support to save the house. We plan to use private donors and grants. Also, this was before the city revealed that much of the taxpayer money ostensibly for Heritage Park is actually to provide city council and staff with a new office building. One question missing from the survey was how high a priority do citizens rank new offices for the mayor and staff? Yes, a small portion of the building will be available for events, but that seems like an afterthought or an excuse. Remember, this is a city of little more than 10,000 people, not 100,000. The city could save enough money to renovate the Ryan House with grants by scaling down to an actual event space, staying in your current offices, or acquiring an existing building if you need more space. The Ryan House and Park could be utilized as another event space in the future. It conveniently is not located right next to the railroad tracks. Don't get me started on the Auburn-like design of the Heritage Park building. It absolutely does not say small town atmosphere that is so important to 78% of the city residents. Couple that with the proposed new apartments in the Red Apple space and the new building replacing the burnt out building on Main Street, we're losing what is best about Sumner. You could have prevented this by requiring facades on new buildings that match the ambiance of Main Street, as is done in Leavenworth, Issaquah, and other cities throughout Washington and the country. You need to take this survey to heart and start listening to your constituents. Thank you.
You. Anybody else? No new business tonight? So I will move on to reports. Councilmember Botetto.
First off, I want to thank our police department for all the work they did this weekend, especially on the incident last night. You know, we saw it from our home, and I just know that, you know, they put their lives on the line, and I really appreciate that dedication they give to us to keep us safe and, you know, keep our community feeling safe. And I believe this is the first time that lethal force has been used in many, many years. And so we're lucky that we have such a great department. So thank you.
Councilmember Bowman.
I'm good, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Cole.
No report tonight, thank you.
Councilmember Elfers.
I just echo what Councilmember Potato mentioned. And offer my condolences to the families as well.
Councilmember Clerget.
All I have is no safety meeting this Wednesday because of the special study session.
Thank you. Councilmember Ranky.
No comment tonight, thank you.
And City Administrator Jason Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As a reminder, we do have a special study session immediately following this meeting. We'll take a short break and then reset the room and get started as quickly as possible. Coming up next week at our study session, coming up this Wednesday, we also have a special study session to review 25-26 budget. Starts at noon here in this chambers. It's going to be several hours long to discuss the public works, streets, sidewalks, and utility budgets. At the September 23rd study session, which is next Monday, we'll continue our budget presentations and we'll be focusing on the cemetery, fleet, metro animal services, community development, senior center, and community services. The following week on September 30th, we'll also have a special study session that is a fifth Monday, which obviously we know normally we don't have meetings on the fifth Monday, but we get to have one this month. We'll be continuing on budget, talking about information technology, parks capital, facilities, and facility capital. At the October 7th regular council meeting, Sumner Bonnie Lake School District will be here to give a presentation on their upcoming bond. We'll have a proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And then you have two ordinances for your consideration. One is amending our park rules to address the operating hours of the Rainier View Covered Court. And the second one is to adopt the third quarter budget amendments for the 23-24 budget. On the commission front, the Planning Commission is meeting this Thursday at 6 p.m. and they'll be making a final recommendation regarding the 2024 comprehensive plan update, including related plans and development regulations. And lastly, I just want to remind the public that we do have a vacancy on our council right now. We're accepting applications. More information can be found on our website, and applications are due October 8th at 5 p.m. Happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Any questions? Any questions? No? I think you're free to go.
Thank you.
Okay, I too want to thank the police officers for all they did and all they do. I appreciate them a lot. I also would like to wish happy birthday to Councilmember Bowman and City Clerk Michelle Thomas. So we would sing happy birthday, but we didn't practice. So. All right, so I'm going to adjourn this council meeting. We have no executive session tonight, but we will have a special study session right after this. So this is adjourned at 6:22. And then September 16th, 2024 special study session at 6:24 p.m. And I will call on Jeff Steffens. I'm
Picture me,
gonna call
Mayor.
on Jason then.
Sometimes we look alike.
Jason will go for it.
I delegated. You get confused.
You did.
Sorry, just a minute. My computer locked up on me.
Oh,
Of course, when you're waiting for duo, it always takes longer
know.
when you're waiting in front of people.
the whole thing is open.
Okay. So tonight, we're going to start going through the department budget requests that came in. This is. Be reminded, Jeff, can you go click on this? So last week, as you recall, we went through the general fund financial forecast and went through where council's been so far. As a reminder, all the departments submitted their budgets to the executive mayor, and the mayor and I with every single department, and we went through their proposals and made some cuts, made some changes, found some efficiencies. I will be pointing those out to you as we go through the budget process. I will say I was very pleased with our department heads. They were very thoughtful in their budget asks this year. They know that we're in a more constrained environment, and we're very thoughtful with what they were asking for and made sure that there was all the efficiencies that they could find were identified. We're working. So tonight, we're going through largely the internal service, general fund departments, as well as law enforcement and our drug fund. So what we're going to cover, in front of you have the department budget sheets that will be in the budget document. So we're going to piece it out to you as we go through. So you're not getting a 500-page document. We're going to give you a couple fund pages every time before the meeting. For the public, there are some, if one of the staff members could grab them off the table and put them, that'd be great for me. Some of those things. We're going to go through the main functions of the department, any mandates that we are experiencing right now, some budget impacts that we're watching, how the budget fulfills our goals, as well as the council priorities. As you recall, last week when Jeff and Cassandra and Carmen presented, they went through really the budget helps us enact the plans that council's been working on, our parks plan, our housing action plan, our transportation plan, our comp plan, all those different plans that we work on that are multi-year planning documents. The budget helps fund the outcome of those. We'll go over what are the significant ongoing items in each department, as well as any one-time expenses. And then if applicable, we'll talk about difficult choices that the mayor made, staffing changes, or items for future consideration. As you're going to see throughout all of the presentations, there's going to be a handful of items that are definitely worthy that council needs to be considering for future budget discussions towards the end of the process. Because we are going to have a little bit of leftover revenue that you might want to throw at one of these projects to keep it alive. So we'll be going through those, especially on Wednesday. You're going to see that more when we come down to streets and sidewalks to make sure that we maintain our level of service. So what are we not going to cover? This is a very big budget. Like I said, it's about 500 pages, about over $100 million over the biennium when you look at all the funds. So that means that we can't get into every single line item detail. So what the budget sheet in front of you, it rolls up all those line items into some different categories like salaries, benefits, supplies, services and charges, interbud transfers, and authorized number of employees per that department. That being said, we are happy to sit down with any one of you for hours if you even need to, because Cassandra loves this, and go through every single line item in the budget. And we're happy to dive into the weeds if you so desire. So with that, before I get into the departments, any questions from council about process?
Any questions? Good to go.
Okay, legislative, this is your department, right? This is for our council, not the mayor. The mayor is part of the executive budget. So I think you all know your job is to serve as the policymakers and set the direction of the city. And then the executive branch led by the mayor executes your policies. So what are some mandates that we are seeing? Definitely an increase to remove local decision-making from land use. And that's the state doing that. Some of that is offset by planning grants, but the ultimate implementation, it still rests on the policymakers, which is you guys as council. Also changes to the Growth Management Act requiring housing and job growth by income bands. This is a new requirement from a couple years ago. Once again, partially offset by state grants, but it does put a lot of pressure on the cities to make land use decisions, and also potentially in the future, funding decisions on how you, obtain those affordable income bands. So what are the impacts? What are we watching as far as the budget goes from the legislative side? Structurally, we are imbalanced. The 1% cap on city property tax leads to the fiscal cliff with basic inflation at 4 to 10%. Doing more with less is not a long-term sustainable strategy. We've been doing more with less my entire 27-year career in government. And it really got magnified when this 1% property tax cap came in, because while wages are growing at less than 10%, definitely less than 5% a lot of times, it's our professional services and costs of doing projects and construction, which is going far greater than 10%. So you end up with this structurally imbalanced system. And then I'd also say that the public shifting view of the city to a business, there's definitely an increased demand for service, which is creating some stress in the system. Cities are being asked to provide more types of social services rather than the basic services of streets and police. And it's balancing what can we afford with what does the public desire. Council priorities, each department will go through the specific council priorities of the budget gets, but because you're the policymakers and these are your priorities, your budget and your job affects all 5 of your council priorities. Notable expenses in your budget, the ongoing cost of AWC conference registrations. We budget to send 2 people to the AWC conference every single year. If you've not been to an AWC conference, I encourage you to attend. It's a good opportunity to go and do some learning as well as some networking with your colleagues throughout the state. Also out of the legislative budget, we pay for our lobbying fees. So we do have a contract lobbyist. For the 2-year biennium, it's $185,000. $108,000 of that comes out of our utility budget. So you're looking at roughly $80,000 out of the general fund for 2 years. Yes.
So, Councilmember Ranky and I went to the finance, convention. Where would that money come from?
It also comes in this. So there is some additional training money on top of that AWC conference in your budget.
Thank you.
Can you clarify the lobbyist? Is that like one full-time person, or is it just a contract with the consulting? Or how is that structured?
Sure, it is a contract that's a retainer amount per month, not, divide that by 24 and you get the monthly amount.
I was gonna ask, is there a reason why it comes out of utility fund?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we look at is what is on our legislative agenda that you adopt every year. And if there are items that are specific to a utility, in this case, we're talking about our water rights and the Foster Pilot Project. We're able to bill some of our lobbyist time to that utility rather than to the general fund. So our lobbyist spends quite a bit of time actually working on the Foster Pilot Project, which is our water rights pilot project that we're a part of. So that's why a lot of it comes out of water. And then the storm portion has a lot to do with the White River Restoration Project that we're continuing to lobby for funds on.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to executive. So executive is kind of a unique department. This is the mayor. This is me. It's Jeff. And it's Carmen and Joe McKinney. So it's our communications division, admin services director, myself and the mayor. So what is our job? Our job is to make sure that the policies that council puts into place are effectuated. So we administer the programs and make sure that we inform the public of those. A lot of time is spent on coordinating the partnership with other governmental agencies and non-governmental organizations. And obviously monitoring the state and federal legislative activity. So not only monitor what's going on in Olympia, but we also monitor what's going on in Washington, D.C. to see if there's any lobbying efforts that we can do. Throughout the legislative session, we also make sure that our staff is watching their areas of responsibility. So if it's land use, that Mr. Windish is paying attention to those, signing in and testifying as appropriate, or the mayor or even council, if you'd like to testify in favor or against the bill, we make sure that that is able to happen. Some mandates, the biggest one that as a city, we are facing that affects the executive department, but also largely affects our information technology department is the ADA digital accessibility. So the federal government released some new ADA digital accessibility requirements for not only our website, but also third parties that integrate with our website. So think about our utility billing software, our permit software, your council packet software, that's a third party. All have to meet these new standards that are really going to be a challenge in some cases to make sure that we are meeting. And it's to help people with visual disabilities be able to interact with our website. It'll eventually even impact how we broadcast our council meetings and have to go through descriptive audio video for our council meetings or for presentations that we give. We're gonna have to change the way that we put those presentations together to make sure that it meets these new ADA criteria. Once again, federal government requirement, not funded. If we don't do it, we could be subject to an EEOC complaint and possible penalties.
Any questions on that, guys?
Things that we're watching on the budget, all efficiencies that are easy have been used. Any further efficiency that would be a significant cost savings is going to be a change of service. Obviously, the shift in the economy and the fiscal cliff, they are forcing difficult decisions and a much tighter budget. And then, as I mentioned before, the same with the legislative department, the increasing public expectations related to service levels and balancing those against what we are able to provide. This is a slide that was not in the legislative section because it's specific to departments. And this is, what goals are we fulfilling? We're focusing a lot on capital facilities and strategic tourism because as you recall, the communications department is under the executive branch. We're busy writing grants to support those things. We're providing directional oversight and enhancing our partnerships to leverage any efficiencies that we can. The council priorities, this is, you'll start seeing this. So if you look at, well, for executive, it's excellent government. And then if you recall, under your council priorities, you have excellent government, and then you have different bullet points on what does that mean. And for the executive department, it really hits all 5 of those bullet points under excellent government, making sure that we're equitably distributing our resources. And by resources, that means our financial resources and staff resources. Making sure that we are fiscally balanced, providing that desired mix of services, transparency in policy and actions, responding and engaging with the community, and leveraging partnerships for enhanced services. Some ongoing expenditures in the executive department include the print newsletter. So we went down to quarterly for 8 issues. That's about $33,000 for the biennium. The PCTV video production services. So this is, we can buy additional time with PCTV to provide educational videos to the public. And they're very professional. And we've done a number of them over the years. So that's those have traditionally been billed out to projects, and now they're all just coming under the communications budget at $5,200 for the biennium. And then the RCC PEG fee match. So we have to, in order to be a member at PCTV, we match the PEG fees that they collect, and then we remit those, I think quarterly, right? Mm-hmm. Quarterly.
And can you tell me what PEG means? Or
Public, education, government.
Thank you, Jeff.
Very good.
It's been a while since I've been on that committee. Jeff was there. One thing that the communications division asked for was a summer intern for 25 and 26. The purpose of the intern is to help with events and, staffing these events and having like a city booth is something that is a really important part of our outreach, but it's difficult to find staff members to do this. We've been paying non-exempt staff overtime to help cover those things. So we feel that having an intern to help us staff those events is money well spent. Additionally, the intern will help with other summertime communications related projects, help us boost social media, and just help out. There's a lot of things that go on in the summer months, so it's nice to have an extra set of hands. Our plan would be to use the Degrees of Change seed internship program like we're doing with our public works interns. A lot of value for the money there, and usually get students that are going away to a four-year school, but then have some sort of geographical tie to Pierce County in the first place. So they're very vested in this area. Turn over to Cassandra for finance.
Near and dear to my heart. So finance, we really coordinate the flow of money in and out of the city, and that takes place in a lot of different ways. Accurate accounting, really, this is the crux of what we do. We build trust with the public, with city council, with all of our stakeholders, so that they know how their money is being spent. We use that accounting, it gives us the transparency. Frankly, it benefits us when we're looking at bond ratings. It benefits us when we're looking when we're going through our state audit with the auditor. Utility billing, we manage all of our utility billing. That's for water, sewer, and stormwater. So that's issuing the bills as well as doing all of the collections and receiving. Accounts payable, we process all of our city payments to vendors and consultants. And then we work with the departments to ensure that not only do we have strong internal controls, but that we're also open and transparent with our vendors and with our staff. This is becoming more and more important as cybersecurity and cyber fraud is on the rise, specifically with payments. So we spend a lot more time working on our internal controls to ensure that any payment that goes out of the city is valid and just and is for city services rendered.
So regarding the utility billing,
Yes.
I pay mine online, but I still get a bill. And is there any efficiency in, not having those sent out? Or is it just as cheap to have everybody get a bill as not?
I'm going to pass the buck here, and I'm going to say this is a software issue. The software company is aware of it. It is a known bug. We have the ability in resident access to elect for email bills only, but it doesn't transfer back to the code in the software. And so what it does is it's still producing that paper bill regardless of the opt-out. What we would need to do when we process our bills, we send a flat file to a third party that does all the mailings for us. And we would need to literally manually go through and pull all of them out, and it would just be it'd be more expensive to do that than to just send them.
But your system is very good about notifying you that here's your bill on like the first, it's gonna be withdrawn from your account. So you have time and then you get a good receipt once that money is paid. I like the system, so but I had a feeling it was, you probably would have to manually do all the.
Yeah. It is a quirk. It is something that we constantly think, is this fixed yet?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
thank you. I appreciate that. Grant tracking. This is becoming more and more a significant portion of our daily work. Our public works department, our police department, our parks department, they all excel at getting grants with the help of our communications department. Every time we get a grant, there is a lot of work that goes into the administration of that grant. And it may be, and it will start even with the application. There's financial information required to apply out through finance processes, the reimbursement request, and then we handle the single audit where the auditor is auditing our compliance with the specific requirements of each of those grants. And then budget and forecasting. That's really the bulk of what I do, working on budget. Budget has kind of a finite period that we're taking action on it. I'm working on budget all year round. And so our department managers, our department heads are responsible for reviewing their budgets, asking questions, and really making sure that we know where the money is. So that is what we do. Some of the mandates that we have in finance, our annual audit, that's a big one. We have 3 annual audits. We have a financial audit, a federal audit that is looking at our compliance with federal grants, as well as our accountability audit. We are required by statute to be audited by the state auditor's office. We don't have an option on who audits us. And we are charged, the 2025 rate will be $139 per hour for audit. We spend between $40,000 and $50,000 annually on our audit. We try and make everything as audit ready as possible before that audit begins, so that we can really minimize the time that the auditors are spending chasing information. Utility shutoffs, specifically during heat advisories. This is new legislation that has occurred over the past couple of years. There is a broad statute that limits or even eliminates our ability to terminate service for non-payment for utilities whenever there is knowledge that a heat event may be announced. What this does, it severely limits really our ability to do those utility shutoffs in the summer, because there are requirements as far as timeliness, there are requirements as far as notice, and again, it's a very broad definition of what constitutes that heat emergency. And what the impact that has on staff, of course, is it's more collection activities. It's more trying to get those bills brought current, more working with the customers. And we're happy to work with the customers anytime. We want to be sure that everyone has as much opportunity as they can to make those payments. But there are times when it does get a little bit onerous, when we are not able to use the tools that we would normally have at our disposal. Some budget impacts that we're watching, something we've been talking with Finance and Personnel Committee about on a monthly basis, is our softening of sales tax and other revenues due to inflationary pressures. We also talked about that last week with sales tax softening, as well as our development service-related revenues. We also have increasing costs of financial software and electronic payment options. And this is something that you don't always think about, but the more and more we try and offer really good, convenient, efficient, transparent payment options to our community, the more cost and really impact it has on the back end. So for instance, right now I think we have 6 credit card processors. Each one of those is a separate batch that has to be reconciled and posted daily. We have Retail Lockbox, which does an electronic remittance of utility payments. We're getting in a lot of ACH payments that have to be individually tracked, monitored, and reconciled. It's all a good use of funds, but it does have an impact that begins to really add up. Increasing costs of financial software. We use Tyler's ERP, it's enterprise software. It does great. It has a lot of advantages and efficiencies and benefits over our old software program, but they are looking at moving all self-hosted sites to a software as a service or a cloud solution. With that comes additional costs. Tyler will be requiring us to use their Tyler payments processor instead of the processors we currently use, again, at an increased cost. And so we're always looking at ways that we can be more efficient with our software, but also knowing that we don't have a lot of other options in that venue. Increasing regulatory framework on grant management. Oh, I could spend hours on that. Like I said, our staff is great at getting grants. There is no such thing as free money. So there are 2 of us in finance, along with staff in the departments that work very hard at making sure that our use of grants is transparent, it's easily accountable, and that the granting agencies continue to have faith in us. They want to know where their money's being spent. It's their right to know that. And that's how we continue to be successful in grants. And then changing accounting and auditing requirements from the state and federal agencies. We report on a cash basis. That is a basis of accounting prescribed by the state auditor's office. There's an annual BARS update. There's always something that's changing. Sometimes that's a simple change. Sometimes that requires some changes in our financial software. And then, of course, best practices with GASB, it's the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, that are routinely coming down with new pronouncements, whether it be on changes in pension accounting, changes in lease accounting. For instance, we have new pronouncements that we now disclose the dollar value of the obligation of all leases, for the life of the lease. We do the same thing for software as a service contracts. So Those are all great as far as transparency and accountability, but they do have a work impact. Fulfilling goals, capital facilities and transportation plan. And this really comes down to our work with the departments with grants, as well as our transparent utility billing that supports the revenue requirements for our utility funds. Our council priorities, we really do fall under the excellent government, and that's our equitable distribution of resources. The big one for us is long-range financial stability, as well as a fiscally balanced mix of desired services. And that transparency in policy and actions, that's a big one for me. Numbers are numbers. You know, I'm happy to share numbers whenever they are, and I enjoy talking about it. Some notable items in the finance department budget. State auditor, again, $113,000 with our new rates. You'll see the Tyler PACE program. It's $31,000 over the biennium. Tyler PACE program is a discounted block of training sessions or implementation days that we buy up front for our software. And then we can use them and schedule them on a variety of different things. For instance, we've got half of a PACE day coming up on Thursday for our payroll analyst to kind of refine our DRS retirement reporting. We've got a PACE day coming up. We have two new employees, relatively new employees. So we've got a PACE day coming up to use just as a utility billing, 101, because as we try and introduce that cross training, we can use those PACE days for that. And then CPPCE training. I apologize for the acronyms. That is our certified payroll professional. Every 5 years, she is required to obtain a certain number of continuing education or CE credits to maintain her certification. It's a pricey training to really maximize getting those credits. And so what we've done is she was very thoughtful and worked out a schedule where she attends a payroll congress virtually for 2 years, and every 3rd year she attends in person. We thought that was a great compromise for her to really maximize getting those CE credits so that she can maintain her certification. And so 2025 is the year that she would be attending the in-person Congress. And then on the one-time revenues, we have a fleet replacement reserve study. We're anticipating that will be about $30,000. And that is working with a consultant to update our rate model for our fleet replacement. So that is looking at all of our rolling stock, useful lives, salvage values, the user, and waiting out to be sure that we're accruing accruing a sufficient amount for replacement when that equipment is ready to be replaced. Oh, one more slide. For personnel changes, we're asking to continue with our finance specialist. This is a position that council approved over hiring this year in 2024. We have a retirement in finance coming up at the end of March 2025. And so we've hired this finance specialist who is working on, we've got her loaded with a lot of projects. We're also working on cross training. So what we're asking to do is continue that position through the biennium. As with any retirement, after retirement, we take a look at the department and evaluate, and we see what the best mix of responsibilities is. But right now, what we're asking to do is to continue that position through the biennium.
I'll just add that on the finance specialist position, the other justification is the sheer amount of grants that we've been getting lately is putting a lot of extra strain on the finance department, as well as the new pre-treatment program mandate that is coming down. As you know, we're being delegated as a pre-treatment agency. That is going to have an impact on finance and billing. So
yeah,
we're trying to hedge and get ready for that. Also, just a reminder that while you see those numbers up there, those are not all general fund dollars. It is allocated back out through our indirect cost allocation program. So some of this will be definitely offset by utilities.
Yep.
Do you have a round figure about how much grants you bring, the city brings in annually or over the next 2 years? Is it?
Can I punt that question to Wednesday? Because we're going to spend a lot of time talking about all the grants that we've been getting lately.
Of course.
And part of the complexity, especially when we're looking at two biggest projects that we have coming up are, of course, the White River Restoration, including Stewart Road Bridge.
Yeah.
When we're looking at these, really, these are legacy projects. These are things that are
What was the second project?
Stewart Road Bridge. So when we're looking at these kind of legacy projects, we've been, it's so exciting to see these projects and to see the extent to which they have buy-in from partners. And so these projects are so heavily funded. But that's also, you know, it's complex when we've got 4 or 5 different funding partners on one project. And really what we're trying to do is maximize each dollar, making sure that, you know, we've got this is being a match for this, is being a match for this, but we have to do this first because this grant has a time limit. And this one is only for engineer or only for design, but this one's for construction. It's a lot that goes into trying to balance, making sure that we're, I'm stingy. I don't want to leave a dollar on the table. So.
As a preview, I can tell you that it's in the tens of millions in the next biennial.
The city is very successful.
Yeah.
Just like to get that out there.
And I just have one comment because I'm very familiar with grant administration. One of the questions I had before this that I did not ask was, how do you do all of this work? I know what it takes. I supervised 2 teams that did that. So I know what it takes, and I think that's well needed.
We have a very good team.
Superwoman.
Super
She
team.
is.
Or they are.
Yeah.
It's in court.
Anybody else?
For sure. I could do. Okay. That's nice. All right, moving on to the legal department. So they have, this is an interesting department. It's not only our city attorney, but it's also the city clerk, a record specialist, a victim advocate, contract prosecutors and attorneys. So quite a wide array of people. So obviously, it's a legal department. They provide legal counsel. So they provide legal advice on all matters related to city business. They also represent the city in lawsuits or other civil matters. Legal department's also responsible for the public records, responding to public records requests, as well as developing policy and process to make sure that we meet the records request laws as well as the retention laws. As I mentioned, we also do criminal prosecution for misdemeanor crimes that happen in the city of Sumner, as well as traffic infractions. We employ a staff member that is a legal assistant, but also provides victim assistance to domestic violence victims. So she spends a lot of time coordinating with them, helping them get assistance, making sure that they're aware of where the case is in the criminal trial, in the criminal trial process. Spends a lot of time communicating with them and walking them through that process. And then the city clerk is also in the legal department. So you know that Michelle clerks all of our meetings, responsible for coordinating all of the council packets, public notices that are related to council business, meeting agendas, et cetera. Mandates. First off, I want to say, you know, when we talk about mandates, I should have said this at the beginning, not all mandates are bad, right? There's a lot of good mandates. So please be aware that when we're talking about mandates, it's also just to make you aware of things that we can't cut from the budget. We have to do these types of things. And there's some good mandates here that are good examples of that. Maybe not the first one. First one is outnoted. Right now, whenever we do a legal notice, we have to post it in a newspaper of record. Our newspaper of record is the Enumclaw Courier-Herald. Okay. That's our newspaper of record. Why we chose the Enumclaw Courier-Herald is because all their legal notices are available online and not behind a paywall. We've had a lot of struggles with other newspapers in the region trying to find where our legal notices are actually showing up. And then we also had some billing issues. So we've chosen to go that way. Why the state still requires this when not a lot of people are looking for legal notices in a newspaper nowadays, I'm not sure. So obviously we meet that legal mandate that's required by state law. It's not funded, but we do a lot more other ways of providing those legal notices for our website, e-news, et cetera. A good example of one that is not necessarily a negative mandate, but it is an impact is the public records response. We're seeing, you know, we obviously have a very tight timeline to do an initial response and communicate with the requester. But what we're seeing is a lot more overbroad requests, as well as additional requests for video type records. And those all take considerably more staff time to process. And those overbroad requests, it could be, I want to see all of the emails between the state and the state. And then we have to go through every single email, make sure there's nothing that this could be that's exempt from public disclosure, and then release those installments. Now, when I say it's not funded, it isn't funded. Do we charge fees to requesters? Yes, we do, but we don't make up anywhere near the staff time that we put into responding to those requests. And then this is another, not a bad mandate. It's actually a good mandate that I think came from the pandemic, and that's that council meetings must be available by a streaming service. So pre-pandemic, you can remember the only way that the public could attend a council meeting was in person. And regular council meetings were available on PCTV, you know, that PEG channel that you could go and watch. I think channel 22. Go watch the council meetings if you're up late at night. But now people can join our meetings virtually all the time. And we stream our study sessions, which we were never doing or never able to do prior to the pandemic. So while that's required by the state, it isn't funded, and there is an ongoing cost with that. So the budget impacts the legal department, similar to other departments, the constantly shifting state and federal laws requires legal to spend considerable time reading case law, figuring out the best education to give to our staff, make sure that we're in compliance and we don't cause unnecessary risk or liability for the city. And then, as I mentioned before, the increasing costs associated with fulfilling body worn camera and complex records requests. We have a team that works on public records requests. While Michelle is the leader of that team as the city clerk, she relies heavily on members of the police department record staff, as well as our upstairs record specialists to help fulfill those. And then has to coordinate searching for responsive records with all of the different departments that may have responsive records. So fulfilling goals of the council, legal spends a lot of time on capital improvement projects, as well as our needed valued services of such as public safety. They review and negotiate all contracts and property acquisition for transportation, environmental, and parks projects. So pretty much any piece of property, well, any piece of property the city buys, legal is involved in that. And then also ensuring on the public safety front, making sure that, we have very consistent prosecution. That's a philosophy in of itself. What do we prosecute for? What do we make a deal on? How do we evaluate cases for their merit, and also, prior criminal activity or history of the defendant, making sure that we protect the public when all possible. So the council priorities legal department fulfills public safety, progressive, collaborative, and systemic social service solutions. Jeff will touch on municipal court here in a minute, but obviously the prosecutor is a key aspect of therapeutic or community court. Legal department is always making sure that we provide excellent transparency in our policy and actions, as well as the equitable distribution of resources. Some ongoing expenses out of the legal department. First off, indigent defense services. So this is the public defender. So if you weren't aware, the city is required to pay for public defense services for anybody that is seen in Sumner Municipal Court. You might be wondering, why is this in the legal budget when it's really associated with the court? Well, that's a Cassandra question in the bar's manual. It's just it's an accounting way that, they say it needs to be done. Jeff will get into some additional challenges that we're seeing with indigent defense when he talks about municipal court here in just a minute, because that is something that's on the horizon. Other ongoing, the contract for prosecution services. So we contract with a private attorney to be our city prosecutor. So he shows up, he reviews all of our cases, makes charging decisions, and then represents us in municipal court. There is some one-time expenses in the legal budget, including 5G implementation legal services. We know that as 5G service comes to cities, we're going to have to continually evaluate how those are zoned and how they are implemented. That's something that we've been working on for a number of years. And I think that technology is changing so rapidly. I think probably a lot of people have 5G on their phone right now, but it doesn't have the, the towers every 100 feet like they were originally thinking it was going to be. So it'll be interesting to see how that technology changes how we implement 5G in the future. We have environmental legal services. We have a contract that's being carried over from this year for environmental legal services for a cleanup project that we're involved in. And then golf course legal services. This is also a carryover as we finalize all the transition of selling the golf course and into the White River project. Andrea has requested to carry over Don Marcy's contract of $32,000. Now, these, I want to make sure you understand, these one-time expenses are paid for only if we use those services. So if we don't use any of Don Marcy's services, for example, we wouldn't spend any of this $32,000. One change that the mayor made to the budget, Andrea had asked for $50,000 for external legal services. This is to handle things that pop up, because they do. That's just the nature of the business that we're in. And the mayor reduced that to $10,000, knowing that if there is something that rises to this level, we can come back to council and discuss it with you and come up with a plan of the best way to address it, which would be a budget amendment if necessary. But 10,000 would be enough to get first started if we need something immediately. Any questions about legal?
Is that a quick one on the one-time services you just talked about, the golf course and all that?
Yeah.
It's a biennium budget, or sort of both years? Is that amount, or is that?
Amount for both years.
Okay, so that's not just 25, but 25.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I will begin with our municipal court department. So as you are all aware, municipal court has done a partnership with the city of Bonnie Lake. They provide services via a interlocal contract with the city. We provide a judge, we provide a prosecutor, which comes out of Andrea's legal department, and a public defender, which actually kind of stands alone in his own department by himself. He's not part of the court, he's not part of legal, he's on his own. But Bonnie Lake provides court building and all the court clerks. They adjudicate cases. Limited jurisdiction, it serves those that are charged with misdemeanors, civil infractions, or the other popular parking violations. They also run a community court. It's an option for specific cases to help defendants improve their lives that are dealing with substance abuse problems. No, I went too far. So some mandates that we're looking at. There's some proposed changes to the indigent defense standards. I think we all can agree that it is important to have people get good public defense representation. So the state is weighing options to lower down their number of cases that they're able to have in a year, which is great. But what that means is courts like us might have to have multiple public defenders. And it's not real easy to find people that are practicing this subsection of the law. There's just not many of them out there. We also have changes to drug laws that impact our municipal courts. Drugs were illegal. Drugs were legal again. Now they're illegal. And it's changed. The laws have changed, and a lot of things that previously would not have gone in our court are now coming down to our municipal court. So it really is changing our case counts and the amount of time that we're spending in court dealing with these types of stuff. Some of the budget impacts, like I mentioned, therapeutic court funding. We have our second year of court funding. It goes through June of next year because it's on the state's fiscal year. But in year two, we didn't get as much as we asked for. Now, I think that our court is able to make some adjustments and fit within the budget grant that they got or the allotment from the state. But there's no guarantee that that's going to continue. And as more and more people have community courts, either those that are doing them are going to get less, or the state's going to have to come up with more money. And I think we can probably guess how that's going to end up. And then, as mentioned before, some proposed changes to indigent defense standards. As far as fulfilling goals, needed and value services. So this is really basic public safety, helps fulfill all goals and plans. Program overview. So ongoing, as I mentioned, we have our our court contract with the city of Bonnie Lake, $567,000. We pay banking fees as people pay for their court fines with credit cards. There's an offset, there's a banking fee that we have to pay for that. We also pay interpreter services. And then the one time is the community court therapeutic grant. Council priorities, obviously heavy on the public safety side. And really collaboration, it's collaboration between us and the city of Bonnie Lake. And then excellent government leveraging partnerships. Having court up at Bonnie Lake versus having it here is still a cost savings for the city of Sumner. Any questions on court?
So I'm just looking at the budget overview, and the 2024 revised budget is $567,000. And then the proposed for 25 is $498,809, and 26 is 423,649. So I'm just wondering why it was going down, and what was there like a one-time?
So that's reflecting that the therapeutic court is only funded through June of 2025.
Okay.
So if legislature funds it again for the next state biennium, we'll come back to council with a budget amendment to accept that funding to handle the remaining part of the 25-26 biennium.
Okay, all right, good.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
we've got 6 months into the 24-month biennium is funded, but beyond that is.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, for those of us who are a little ignorant, can you just give a really like 1 minute? What is therapeutic court?
You want me to do it?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
So therapeutic court is, so I'm just gonna give an example. You have a subject that is charged with a theft, let's say they were shoplifting. And the prosecutor and the public defender can review that case and say, you know what, this person, you know, based on their criminal history and talking to them, this might be their theft problem might be caused by either substance abuse or mental health issues. So what they do is they put them into what they call community court. And it takes them out of the mainstream court, and it's a more informal process that helps people connect with resources to get either substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, maybe housing assistance, kind of get their life back together, with the goal of reducing recidivism so that they won't go out and commit another theft right away. Whereas traditional court, right, they're gonna process the case, maybe do an SOC, they're gonna, you know, maybe take it to trial, they're gonna get sentenced.
Doesn't solve the
Doesn't solve the
underlying
underlying problem, exactly. That's the idea behind community court.
But it's, yeah, and it's held completely differently than regular court. It functions, it's much more hands-on, touchy-feely. We have you know, mental health providers, we have counselors. It's very different.
The legislative funding funds 100% of the direct costs of community court. So what it doesn't fund is really our staff time in administering the program, but it funds the coordinator, the mental health counselors, and the operating costs.
And this was a mandate at some point. Is it pretty new?
This is, well, therapeutic courts have been around a long time. I mean, city of Seattle has operated a therapeutic court for at least a decade, probably a lot longer than that. This was in response to the Blake decision. So when they recriminalized drugs, not only, as Jeff mentioned, they took what used to be a felony, in a lot of cases, some of those possession level felonies are now misdemeanors. So now they're in our court, and one of the goals of the Blake fix is to reduce recidivism and connect people with treatment. So this is how one of the
Yeah,
methods.
it's not a mandate, but the state has provided the funding that we have gone after this program.
That's a good distinction. Our court chose to apply to have a therapeutic community court, right? Not all courts have done that because, as Cassandra mentioned, while there is grant funds to cover a lot of it, the long-term funding is uncertain and unknown. And also there is a lot of other associated costs that are not covered by the grant that we are absorbing.
I just wanted to make a comment that we're always invited to go to the graduation, you know, when the client finishes their program. And then I believe, they also speak to the audience and tell about the impact, so it's definitely is a very worthwhile program.
Funny to see somebody graduate from that.
I got a quick question. On the, I'm just looking at the chart, the authorized FTE, is that a city of Sumner employee or is that Bonnie Lake employee? Or is that, do we have an?
The judge.
Oh, the judge.
The judge is our one city employee. Everything else is
Everything else is Bonnie Lake.
Bonnie Lake.
Okay.
Aside from, yeah, they're all Bonnie Lake. Sorry, that's where 31 employees, yes. Bonnie Lake are contracted.
You guys down there? All right. Go ahead.
Okay, next we're on to human resources and risk management. So the main functions of the HR and risk management departments, obviously to recruit and hire. So HR is integral in recruiting and hiring employees, posting jobs, setting up interviews, ensuring that the process is equitable and transparent for all applicants. HR spends a lot of time supporting employees, so that's understanding policies, giving accesses to resources such as family and medical leave, help explaining benefits, and then labor relations. We have 4 labor contracts through 3 labor unions that we work with. Typically a labor contract spans 3 years, so we're regularly reviewing those, updating them, and renegotiating them. So some of the mandates that we're looking at, we've recently had some changes to minimum wage. State minimum wage in Washington is fairly high, so we've got to keep competitive rates, especially with some of our more entry-level positions, thinking like summer seasonals and interns like that. We've had to increase the cost, as well as some of our animal control positions to be competitive with what fast food places are charging with higher minimum wage in the state. We also have paid family medical leave, which was a new benefit enacted by the state a few years ago that we have to deal with. And there's continuing law changes, around employment law. Even an existing law will just get interpreted differently and it will affect us on as far as how we do pretty much all the policies and everything that we do here in the city. Budget impacts. So as we mentioned before, we still are having relatively low unemployment and high inflation makes a pretty difficult job market. And we have a lot of pending retirements in this upcoming budget that we're dealing with, specifically in 25. A lot of key positions are folks that are looking to retire. So we have a knowledge gap. We have to go out, we have to recruit those people. We have to train the new employees. So we'll be working on that as well. Fulfilling goals, needed and value services. So there's nothing in HR that's fully automated. I always joke, oh, that's an automatic fix. It's not. So there's lots of things that we have to manually touch. Any goal needs to be qualified and competent staff to achieve success. As far as council priorities, really focusing once again on excellent government, excuse me. The big one at the top there is recruiting and retaining quality, diverse staff. We can't do the things that we do unless we have good staff, and HR is a big part of that. Getting them in the door, keeping them happy. So we have a lot of ongoing services. Once again, the HR department is just one single employee, an HR manager that manages 135 regular employees. So we do have a lot of kind of services that we hire out. So we have recruitment and hiring services. That's things as testing subscription services, advertising, doing background checks. We also have some citywide training for kind of HR policy and law related stuff that's run through the HR department. On the risk side, we have risk services of roughly $61,000. That's for things like hearing tests. The FMCSA clearinghouse is for our CDL drivers. We have to run them through the clearinghouse to make sure that their licenses are in effect, and things like medical exam fees, once again, for CDL drivers. Any sort of those kind of ongoing medical tests for current employees end up in the HR department. We also have an employee wellness program. This $9,000 allows us to get 2% off of our medical bill. It does things like sponsors potlucks. So it's really a good nice thing for employees and it's a good savings. For us. Yeah. We also have a one-time ask, and that's for labor negotiation support. Typically, we do all of our labor negotiations in-house, except for when we negotiate with the police union. With that, we have in the past brought in an outside attorney to help us. In 2026, we'll be negotiating that contract, and that's where this ask comes from. Next department is the diversity, equity, inclusion.
I have one quick question.
Absolutely.
So I was curious about, you mentioned that there were going to be a number of retirements in 2025. So with that comes like vacation payouts. It also comes with like what we call double pocketing, like double staff in one position. You're accounting for all of that within the budget?
We have attempted as much as possible. We have reached out to our employees that we know are retirement eligible and said, not if you did anything, but we think you might be retiring. Then with that, we've gone and estimated, how much leave do they currently have? How much do we think that they're going to have when they might want to retire? How much are they going to earn? Looking at various positions, and we've costed out some of those things. We talked about different methodologies on how to include that or not include it in the budget. And we're hoping that we've got it all in there and we can kind of figure it out. But yeah, that does often mean sometimes a position's vacant for a while, or sometimes we have to have two people at the same time because the one's training the other.
I think the overhire is the thing that
Yeah.
we're least comfortable is in the budget because you don't really know until you get closer. Well, is it going to be a month? Is it going to be 2 months? And then retirement dates change. They move up, they move out. But once you make that decision, it's not uncommon to say, okay, well, I can go a month earlier. Usually doesn't go out.
Yeah. She was like, at any time, my retirement date is any time. Well, that makes easy.
Okay, thank you.
So any other HR questions? Sorry, HR risk. So next, DEIB. So the city has a DEIB committee, and we have a department that's kind of formulated around that committee. Really what it does is it provides training and events. As we know, everyone has bias, and formal training and fun events can help employees kind of gain different perspectives and build understanding across various experiences. We have staff that provide inputs to ensure the city builds trust with the public across different demographics. And Sumner staff and public are diversifying rapidly. As you know, our community is changing, and this fund and its staff committee helps seek ways to build respect and inclusion throughout the city. So as far as budget impacts, we have planned a citywide DEIB training in 2025. We last did that in 2023. 22. I was gonna guess 2. I think 22.
The
Yep.
council did.
Council was included, yeah. So we'll be taking that up again in 2025. We have gone out for a request for proposals and we've selected a vendor, but with all that's going on, including budget, it's not possible to get it done here in 2024. So we're gonna push it off to the beginning of 2025. And really the idea is, like it says, fostering a safe and supportive work culture assists with employee retention improvement. Should be pretty obvious. Fulfilling goals, once again, needed and valued services, an educated and diverse workforce assists the staff in policy review recommendations that support the varying needs of our community. It's very important to have diverse voices. Yes,
When did they add belonging into the equation?
recently this year.
This year.
And
This year.
what does that mean? Is it much different than the other three?
Belonging, think about belonging more like culture, right? You feel welcome here, right? So regardless of any, race, religion, sexual orientation, whatever, it's just, do you feel welcome? And it's really creating that positive culture among employees. That's how the committee has embraced that word.
So council priorities, it's obviously the character of the community and excellent government. So as I mentioned before, the facilitated DEIB training for all staff is budgeted at $65,000. Any questions? On to my next one, if not.
Yeah, there's no slide on the mandate thing. Is this something that wasn't in place in 2021?
This is not a mandate. This is something that staff, council, and the mayor felt was important. So it's something that we voluntarily undertook. Emergency management. So the city had previously housed emergency management under the police department, kind of as an ancillary duty for the deputy chief. And risk management was in the HR department. That's something that Adrian would kind of fill in when she had time. In the last budget, we created emergency management and safety coordinator, which is Evan. He works upstairs, kind of outside of Jason's office. So this is kind of his other part of his budget. So really with emergency management, it's working in partnership. The city has emergency management coordination with regional governments, EPIC, which is the East Pierce Interlocal Coalition, school district, the county. We're also working with non-governmental organizations, obviously like the Red Cross, churches, and YMCA for emergency management. Evan also takes a big role in training. So we have a comprehensive emergency management plan that we have to train both internally and externally with our partners. And then also looking at employee safety. So dealing with workplace injuries, safety, and training with that, things like forklift training, CPR training, first aid training, first aid kits. It all happens in this department as well.
He's Cassandra in the emergency section.
Oh.
Less spreadsheets, but yes,
I think his book is bigger.
just as many acronyms, it's fine. So mandates, we're required to adopt a comprehensive emergency management plan. And if we don't, I guess maybe we're not required, but if we don't, we'll be ineligible for grants. So which really means we are required. We also have to do ongoing training and exercises of the various elements in that plan. So one of the things that we're looking at is we have this, we're looking at evaluating community alert technology, whether that's code red or PC alert, and different ways to notify our employees and our community in case of an emergency. And really making sure anybody that's on staff that's responsible for operating in the emergency operations center that we're trained and we're ready to act if hopefully if necessary. Hopefully we don't have to. Fulfilling goals, once again, adequate planning and training for a wide variety of natural and man-made disasters. This can be anything from flooding, HARs, to earthquakes, to train derailments, to cyber incidents, all sorts of things that would require us to have to respond. Council priorities. So this falls under public safety, emergency preparedness, excellent government, being responsive and engaged with the community, and once again, leveraging partnerships for enhanced services. This is not something that Sumner could do on its own. We have to work with our partners and our neighbors. As far as ongoing costs, we have the interlocal agreement for EPIC, which is $30,000. Difficult choices. So I asked for, and it's been approved, a vehicle for Evan. When we hired Evan, he was a new position and we didn't have a vehicle for him, so we gave him an old cop car. We stripped the cop decals off the side and put a regular Sumner logo on it, but it still looks and runs like an old cop car. It should have been replaced long ago, which is why they were willing to give it up to him. So really, we need to get him a more permanent vehicle. So that's what this $45,000 ask.
Although an emergency guy should be in a police car, you would think.
Took the lights off too, so it doesn't have any of the fun stuff. Any questions on emergency management?
Any questions down there? Oh,
Where's that 45,000 for the vehicle? Is it not in the budget?
So it'll be budgeted in as a transfer out of the emergency management fund, and it would go into the vehicle replacement fund, which we'll discuss
It'll be
next week.
It's interfund.
Yeah, and then that's where the purchase will actually happen.
Has it been ordered?
What?
Has it been ordered?
It has not.
So how many years will it be?
I'm hoping because we're just, a regular old car, sedan, SUV, it shouldn't be as bad as some of the more specialized equipment.
Okay, moving on to development services. Is there anything you want to say about development services being accounted for differently? Sorry, I should not to put you on the spot. You can come back to that. All right, so main function of development services. This is our permit counter. So they handle all permits that come into the city. So they do the delicate job of balancing what the applicant desires to do with the enforcement of our city's zoning codes, comprehensive plan, and infrastructure. That's always a difficult balance, but their mission is to get everybody to yes and help them problem solve and get a permit issued. Also in the development services is our building official, who obviously plays a part in the permit review, but he is also responsible for inspecting any sort of improvements that happen to existing buildings or any building that may fall into disrepair in the city. That takes a lot of time and make sure that, he's properly inspecting to follow the state building code and ADA rules to make sure that the occupants of those buildings are safe. Also in development services is our code compliance officer. So they deal with any sort of non-nuisance type complaint. Nuisance complaints are handled by our community service officer in the police department, but any sort of land use, building, zoning code issues, illicit discharge, a whole wide range of different codes our code compliance officer handles, with always the goal of getting people into compliance before we start issuing fines or taking them to court. And I'll say she's done a great job of getting people into compliance, so we don't have to go down the costly, court enforcement process. Some upcoming mandates. First off, starting at the beginning of the year, we're going to have some required permit approval timelines. So when a permit is deemed that we have complete and comes across our counter, we're going to have a set time frame, depending on if it's a residential or a commercial permit, to get that permit out the door and issued. So that puts a lot of pressure on our department coming up. You're going to see some code changes coming to council in the next few months to incorporate these changes. We also have the building and energy code changes. So those just went into place in July, I believe, of this year. And that changes how the building code is interpreted for commercial buildings within the city. That does affect the city as well. We're going to have to do an energy audit on our building. We'll have to make sure that other buildings are doing an energy audit that are over 20,000 square feet. And that's something that we're continuing to learn about, but it's on the horizon during this next biennium of how we go through that process. Budget impacts to development services, implementing that pre-treatment program. That's going to require a permit. So anybody that's a non-domestic contributor to our sewer system is going to have to be reviewed. So that's everything from a cell phone store all the way up to a food manufacturing that might be a significant industrial user. They're going to have to be reviewed, not only what is new to our city, but what is existing in our city. And that'll be going through the development services process to coordinate that review. We've learned that our building fee structure is a little outdated. So that is probably contributing to our building fee revenues that we're collecting. And then, as I mentioned, the required permit approval timelines. So what goals do they help us fulfill? The transportation plan, our utility plans. So as a reminder, we have utility plans for all of our major utilities that talk about making sure we have enough water, for example, that we have the sewer infrastructure in place. So they make sure that any development activity meets those plans, and our comprehensive plan. Excellent government, as we've mentioned several times tonight, but also protection of natural resources. So they want to make sure that we're hooking up new development or tenant improvements are hooking into our water system correctly, so they don't accidentally, cause a backflow into our drinking water system. And then effectively managing our stormwater. A lot of our development projects down here on the valley floor we need to deal with stormwater effectively. So whether that's routing into a pre-designed storm system or if it's creating a new storm system on site. Some of their ongoing costs, they do have a consultant on standby for plan review. This is to help us make sure that we are meeting those development permit timelines. They also help us deal with bigger cases that we've used them when the high school built last time. We used outside land use plan reviewers just so we could keep the school district moving on time. We've also done that with some of our other big projects because this is a rather small department. We had two planners. They're doing land use. We have one engineer that's doing everything that's on the civil side. And then you have your building official that's also doing fire review. So very small group of employees to manage the permit volume. We're going to be switching to a structural consultant. So right now, we, as you know, we contract with Sound Inspection Services, which then subs out fire reviews and structural. Fire review, we're going to be able to pull back in-house because our employees getting their certifications later this year. But structural, we still don't have anybody on staff that can do structural reviews. So we'll be contracting those out on an hourly basis as needed. And once you get development fees, pay for a lot of these. They offset these expenses. We do still need to have a building inspector on backup because, you know, if our building inspector is on leave, we need to have somebody that can continue to review plans for us. Also, if we have any staff or elected leaders that apply for a permit, we always contract all of those out. So, you know, to have that degree of separation from the city. And then our hearing examiner for any sort of land use appeal comes out of development services, and that's about $20,000 for the biennium. They are asking for a one-time building fee study. So they've done an RFP for this already, identified a firm that can evaluate all of our building fees and make some recommendations to get us more in line with the region on our building fees. Any questions on development services?
What happened in 2023? I'm looking at the cost. It was like a 50% increase in the budget. From 2022 to 2023, it went from like $1 million, like the payroll doubled. Did you guys hire people, reorganize? What happened there?
I will go back and suss that out for you. Happy to.
You got one thing that might be, there's two things that come to mind, and we'll get to the bottom line, but prior to last budget, all permits were handled under a different type of accounting, and now we moved them all into their own department. So that's one thing, and then also our inspection services, you know, had to pay a lot to our contract employee and firm to do a lot of inspection services.
Did you want me to talk about the accounting?
Sure.
Okay.
That'll help explain it.
Yeah. Can you go back a slide or two?
Try it.
There you go. Perfect. So that building fee study, the $85,000. One of the things that I'll be looking at kind of in concert with this is, so right now, development services, both the revenues and the expenditures are accounted for in the general fund. One of the things that I'm looking at is, would this be best set up as an enterprise fund? So an enterprise fund is defined as activities or a function that is supported by user fees, and the user fees wholly support that function. As part of that building fee study, do we set up development services as its own enterprise fund to really ensure that we're able to capture the cost of providing those development services through our fee structure? So you may see some additional conversation coming, you know, kind of down the line on how we account for dev services, whether or not we keep it in the general fund or whether or not we reclassify it as an enterprise fund with the intent that the building rates are set to cover the cost of services.
Yeah, questions on development services? All right, law enforcement. Okay, what does our police department do? Respond to crime, pretty basic, right? I think we are still very unique in that while we have online reporting, we still use the motto, no call too small. So we do respond to any call for service that our community wishes to make, and we try to do so in a timely manner. The other thing that the police department does that probably doesn't get enough credit is the amount of reports and tracking that goes into it. So there's a lot of technical work that happens by our civilian staff. Well, first are our officers to write those reports, and then our civilian staff to document and track all that data, help victims get the follow-up they need, and then meet the state requirements for public records. We get a lot of records requests to our police department for case reports. Investigate. So we want to make sure that our officers have the proper training to equip them and empower them to do thorough investigations. Good investigations lead to just outcomes and accountability. We've done a lot of expansion to our abilities or capabilities rather to process digital evidence. And when I talk about digital evidence, I'm talking mostly cell phones. You know, there's a lot of digital evidence that are out there on social media or on a cell phone that we've received. We've upgraded our technology to be able to handle that and then receive the training to start processing that in-house. Most felony crimes have some sort of digital evidence nexus to them. And it's a big demand on our detectives. Partnerships, you know, we want to maintain our cooperative specialty teams. So this includes like our SWAT team, our crime response unit, our major collision response team. They really serve as a force multiplier. We cannot do our job without collaborating and partnering with our neighboring jurisdictions to investigate crimes that happen in our community. And then community policing, you know, we need to maintain and enhance our public trust with our police department. That is a core tenet of community policing and our police department. I think they do a great job with that and really helping to reduce the fear of crime and the incidence of crime. So as far as mandates go, there has been an increased amount of mandatory training that has occurred. That is by the state. It is partially funded. A lot of times they'll help us pay for the training or to backfill staff, but it never covers 100% of that. Once again, not a bad thing. It's just an impact to the budget. Increased detention costs. When I say detention costs, I mean jail costs or electronic home monitoring. And that's directly related to reclassifying drug crimes to misdemeanors. Once again, that was a state decision to reclassify those. That has an impact on our criminal justice costs. And then data reporting on use of force. One of the bills that passed a couple years ago that it's supposed to be in effect by the end of this year, which it will not be, have nothing to do with us, is statewide data collection on reporting use of force. So every time an officer uses force, and that could be very low level to lethal force, they have to complete a use of force report. And the state wants to take all those reports and put them together. But it's not that simple because our use of force report is slightly different than maybe Puyallups or Milton or whoever. So it's getting everybody on the same, collecting the same data elements. And then also, you know, to do an effective analysis of this, it requires WSU, who's the school that was selected, to also have access to other background data that may not be in that use of force report, but is germane to, you know, determining, you know, trends and if uses of force in the state, you know, are they being used differently against different groups of people? So that is not funded, but it's definitely something that affects us. That is one of the reasons why we switched our use of force reporting to a product called Bluebeam. It's more the industry standard in the state, but there still are differences between how we set up Bluebeam versus maybe how Puyallup sets up their Bluebeam. Budget impacts. We have definitely seen an increase in severity of crimes, which often leads to lengthy investigations. Some of the investigations that we've done over the last couple of years have taken months to get ready to even send to the prosecutor. I wish it was like TV, you know, solve every crime in an hour and get those lab results back in 5 minutes. That's unfortunately not the way it happens. It takes significant time and resources. Challenging time to hire police officers right now. You know, we're sitting with 2 vacancies today, and it's a challenge to find qualified, good employees that want to be police officers. We've, you know, been using hiring bonuses, which sometimes are effective, sometimes they're not effective, but that does have some increased costs to the city. fulfilling goals, obviously needed and valued services, and we do that by responding to calls for service and doing traffic emphasis and making arrests. Council priority, they hit everything in public safety, and then several in excellent government related to partnerships and enhanced services. All right, so let's go through some of their ongoing costs. We'll start at the top, detention services. So once again, that's jail and electronic monitoring. $405,000 for the biennium. As you know, we don't have a jail. We contract with a number of jails throughout the region: Puyallup, Enumclaw, Score, Nisqually, and Pierce County. Each of those have a different daily rate, sometimes a booking fee. And then a lot of this is outside our control. Yes, we can control who we book in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases. But whatever the court then, when the case is adjudicated, or even pre-adjudication, does the judge hold them in jail? That's outside our control. Do they get sentenced to 365 days? Totally outside our control. We can control what jail they do their time in. If they're in the most expensive daily rate, maybe we move them to a cheaper jail to help save some costs. But a lot of this is outside our control. Next one is our dispatch fees and records fees to South Sound 911. So that's $681,000 over the biennium. That pays for people that answer the 911 calls, and then who then dispatch the calls out to our police officers. They also manage our records management software and do some after hours warrant work and protection order entry. Flock cameras, $85,000 for that new technology. Chief Marecki presented on that a few weeks ago. The 2025 amount is covered by a $45,000 grant. So the balance of $40,000 is what is not, well, it's in the budget, but it's a new request. We do on a regular basis replace our firearms. So that's our handguns and our long guns, our rifles. So we do have some rifles that are up for replacement over this biennium, so $30,000 for that. Ammunition continues to be an expensive but necessary training aid. So that's $18,000, and that's all sorts of ammunition: handgun, long gun, etc. The Metro Animal Services per capita. So while we run Metro Animal Services here as the city of Sumner, the per capita that we pay for that service comes out of the police department's budget. Every city pays a per capita, including us. So that's $176,000 for the biennium.
Each or each?
It's $8 per capita plus a licensing true up. So this represents the $8 per capita over 2 years.
That's just Sumner's charge.
That's just
Everybody's
Sumner's.
different.
Every city's $8 on their base fee, but the licensing per capita, we pay a little bit less. We pay $1.85 per capita licensing. So that means that we sell animal licenses. We need to sell $1.85 per capita worth of animal licenses. If we only sell 85 cents, the city's on the hook for that other dollar. Contract cities, so other cities, with the exception of Sumner and Puyallup, pay $2.35 in their licensing per capita. And we'll cover that in a lot of detail when we get to the Metro budget. Radio access and maintenance fees. So every single radio, either a handheld radio or a mobile radio in a car, we pay a monthly reoccurring charge to be on the network to use that system. So that's $51,000. The Metro SWAT per capita, similar to Metro Animal Services, the SWAT interlocal agreement has a per capita cost sharing model. So it's $9,500. And then bulletproof vest replacements. Sorry, Kathy, you can't see behind you there. We're replacing 9 of those over the biennium for $16,400. Police department had a number of one-time requests. Some of these, and we'll go through these, ballistic helmets for our patrol officers. So right now, not every single police officer that works the road has a ballistic helmet assigned to them. So this would give everybody a ballistic helmet. SWAT night vision. We have 2 SWAT operators. They have night visions that are at end of life and need to be replaced. So that's replacing both of those at $20,000, $10,000 each. Night vision binocular, 2 of those for our patrol officers. So this is to allow them to operate at night. It's just a one-piece binocular they can look through if they're looking for a suspect out in the open, even in a building. Those can be useful. Defensive tactics training mats, $1,200 for those. That's so they can do some additional ground defensive tactics training. We're going to locate those in the old cemetery building, we're repurposing for some police use. A patrol drone. So most agencies around us, they have a drone that is issued to their patrol officers. They use it to search for suspects. There's a separate type of drone system that we applied for a grant for. We are going to get the grant, but we've been waiting about 2 years for the federal government to process the paperwork. But that's a more sophisticated drone that helps with crime scene mapping. This one is really just every day out, working on the street. Right now, when we need a drone, which is on a fairly regular basis, we utilize one of our neighboring jurisdictions that'll come down and fly a drone for us. Also, expansion of our less lethal options. So this is 4 pepper ball launchers, which is like, think about a paintball gun that shoots pepper balls, and then 4 40mm less lethal launchers at 5,000. Those would not be assigned to specific officers, but they'd be available one per team, and they could grab them out of the rack and bring them out on the road with them. Any questions on their costs?
Any questions?
You guys have any ideas how to make this into an enterprise fund?
Wish. They did ask for a replacement patrol bicycle that was cut from the budget. They do have some bicycles now that we might be able to fix up and use. It's a nice to have, not a need to have. And then the police actually has some personnel changes. So in this budget includes 2 new police officers, one in each year of the biennium. So you can see 2025, the wages and benefits is about 168,000, but then there's a startup cost of a vehicle as well as some one-time equipment. So the vehicle in year 1 in 2025 is slightly lower because you might recall that we're promoting Sergeant Houselog to lieutenant. So this is actually to buy the lieutenant a vehicle because it's not a fully equipped patrol car. His car would then go back into the patrol fleet, and then a new police car for 2026 is $80,000. So the justification for adding police right now, we've been at the same staffing for about, we added an SRO position and 1 officer in the 17 years I've been with the police department, with the city. So obviously our city continues to grow. We have a lot of growth on the horizon, and making sure that we have adequate staffing to stay ahead of that growth is really important. And this would provide additional patrol shift coverage as well, because we get down to, especially on certain days, we might only have 2 police officers working the road. So it'd be nice to have a little extra cushion on there.
So I agree with you on that. Being on the safety committee, one of the things that we've talked about, not only that, is just the mental health of the officers and the burnout potential, right, for them. So I think that's just a key factor that needs to be kept in mind. You can't work them to death, right? And there's a lot going on these days. So I would just add that to what you were saying.
Oh, yeah, I was just curious, just with the changes that you've mentioned in the community and how high of a priority this was on our survey. What are we looking at? I mean, I almost feel like 2 new officers in the next couple of years. Is that going to be adequate? And do we reevaluate that? I just feel like it was a very high priority. It seems like it's a problem that's growing. Just curious how that's evaluated, and if it's decided in the budget, or if there's a way to do it in between budgets, if something changes or continues to. Anyways, just curious.
No, I think that's an excellent point, Councilmember Alfers. It's something that we need to continually evaluate, and you will have an opportunity. You can always amend the budget to add more staffing. I think one of the challenges that Mr. Steffens alluded to, it's very difficult to hire these positions right now. We have 2 vacancies right now, and we've been sitting on 2 vacancies for a number of months. So even if we add them, I don't know how quickly we can fill them.
So, I mean, you're kind of collecting money when you're not having those positions filled, so I don't think you necessarily need to increase the budget. I mean, I would go with what you have here, but by the time you get them filled and then for them to successfully get into the program is, has been a challenge. So I just think, we need to have good police in our city or good staffing. So.
I would just want to make a clarification. So we're down 2 and we're going to hire 2. So we're looking at 4 really
Correct.
in the next 2 years. So that's going to be interesting, but yeah, good luck.
I would then just add to that, we need 4. I mean, should we pull it this way a little bit and get more sooner? Because of the length of time it takes to get them?
So you're asking, should we accelerate the 26 into 25?
Yeah.
We certainly could. We could even do it at the mid-year, July 1st is an option.
Mhm.
Because as Councilmember Ranky kind of alluded to, and Councilmember Potato, even if you hire an entry level, it could be several months before they get into the police academy, and then you have almost 5-month police academy, a 3-month FTO. I mean, you're at least a year before you have an officer ready to work solo patrol. So
Right.
that is something that council wished to do that. That is an amendment that you could consider as we go through the process.
Okay, thanks.
Did you have any?
All right, last one. Okay. Drug fund. All right, so this is, what's the proper term?
This is a special revenue.
Special revenue. Thank you, Kendra. So the drug fund is kind of a unique thing. It really helps us fund routine drug investigations relating to the possession and or distribution of illegal controlled substances. This fund has been rather stagnant for the better part of 17 plus years. And that's because prior to that, we had a representative of our department on a federal task force that was involved in larger drug investigations. And then if there was a seizure associated with those drug investigations, a portion of that seizure would come back to the home agency. So now we don't have that. So how does this fund grow? It really is drug seizures that our officers do. And our officers do some drug seizures from time to time. But they may not be on the larger dollar amount, so it's not growing that rapidly. So the allowed expenditures in the drug fund is really to support those investigations. What's important to remember is you can't supplant other sources or expenditures. So for example, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to buy the night vision for the SWAT team out of here, even though there's usually a clear nexus to illegal drug activity, because the likely purchase beforehand was either drug funds or now you're supplanting something you already own. So it's not allowed use of those funds. So what are the budget impacts? Kind of like I mentioned, we don't have that ongoing revenue stream into this fund, which also is impacted by the state not supporting regional drug task forces. And the council priorities, it's public safety again. So the only programmed expenditure here is some investigation overtime. So if we get something that our officers need to spend some extra time that's drug related, we can build some overtime to this fund. Questions about the drug fund? Is there anything you want to add?
Can I circle back to development services? I just want to answer Councilmember Elfer's question. So I see what you're looking at. You're looking at specifically in-depth services, 2022 actuals for like personal salaries was 447,000, and then it jumped to 873,000 in 23. It was a change in accounting. Prior to that, our labor distributions for the development services staff were split. So a portion went to the general fund, a portion went to water, a portion sewer, a portion to storm. And that was specifically for the development, the dev services director, as well as the engineer. And I believe one of the permit specialists. We consolidated and we moved 100% of their salary cost into the general fund, specifically into development services. So we could begin to really corral and get a cost analysis of what development services cost for the city. So that was just, it was an accounting change of splitting their labor distribution between multiple funds and then consolidating all into the general fund. The number of FTE stayed the same.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, before I go over the schedule, any other questions about what we covered tonight?
This is for Cassandra, and it's just, and I guess you guys as well. So how many layers of people vet all these numbers before they come here? And is it top down, bottom up, or both ways? Just, you know, figuratively.
It's an octopus.
I'm sure it is.
So it goes from the top down first. The mayor and Jason really kind of give a budget direction to the department directors as as part of a call to budget memo. The department directors review it. Depending on the department, they may do it all themselves. They may delegate it out. The department entries, the budget entries are entered in. And then they start coming back up the chain to the department director. And then they come to finance. We kind of collate it all. And then it comes into the departmental meetings. That's the mayor, us three, the department managers. The department director is always included, and then they bring in anyone else that really touches the budget. From that point, it all goes into the big financial model, specifically in the general fund. And that's line item by line item. And then I go through that with our staff and the mayor, and then we bring that to council. And then council gives your input, and so then just kind of up and down.
Okay, so thank you. So you've got standard work in a process,
Yeah.
basically is what you just said.
Yep.
And then this one, if you don't know it today, although I'll be really shocked if you don't know it within a smidge. Yearly, what's your percent variance on the forecast versus actuals?
It depends on the line item,
Okay, can you just roll it up to the very top?
not off the top of my head.
Okay, so that's just something to kind of noodle on.
Yep.
So I understand line item by line item, or maybe department by department, but just even at the very top, I'm thinking it's not gonna be a huge number. But you can look at it. You don't need to answer it today.
It kind of depends on the line item and the category. We try and come relatively close, and one of the ways we do that is through our quarterly budget amendments. If we see something that is going to have a variance or there's a programmatic change, that's what we're bringing to you quarterly. Also for state statute, we do not have the authority to spend more than our biennial appropriation. Simple as that. So we're always watching that as well. So our variances are going to stay close. We're never going to come really over, again, because we're obligated to stay within our appropriated amount. Some things we may come under if just because of timing, we're not able to complete a project, or knock on wood, cost came under. Sometimes we just let the appropriation lapse at the end of the biennium. Sometimes it gets carried over, but I'll get some more detail.
But basically you adjust quarterly and you have a ceiling that you can't
Yep.
go over. So,
Yes.
so it's probably
Yeah.
that much variance.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
One more question. So I skipped the legal fund. I was just curious, in 2022, there was also a big jump. I didn't ask it at the time, but I was just curious if that was the time you hired someone new, maybe someone.
What category?
I think Andrea knows legal fund under
We
personnel.
added a record specialist position that year.
That was what I,
Yeah,
thank you.
Brand new staff position, yeah.
Perfect.
Right, is that it, guys? Are you
Good.
happy?
Yep.
Okay, coming up Wednesday, noon here. Start with some lunch, Joe. All full before we talk budget with you. And so we're gonna talk about streets. We're gonna talk about general fund street operations, our sidewalk funds, streets capital. We're gonna go over our utilities. So we're really gonna break this down into maintenance and operation, capital improvement projects. Just lost me on the third one. M&O, CIPs and,
The more you think, the farther.
it's been a long day already.
I think that's really good.
You'll be excited, I
Yes.
promise you. Lots of pictures on Wednesday.
Debt service.
Dead sand.
And lunch.
And lunch,
Sounds really good.
right?
Did we hear, talk about lunch?
Yeah.
That'll be lunch.
So noon, try to get you out of here before 5, but it'll probably be closer to 5 than it is to 3, so,
That's good.
all right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, so I will say that this meeting is adjourned at 8:05.
Costco sandwich. Costco sandwiches. Chips.
So I
was like, what are you?
I just have to run it.
I was like, how about hyperventilate?
I heard that, like, but I was already doing it.
Yeah. it's
I was
simple.
trying to really-
Store. And it'll even have refrigerated.
Yeah, that's
Oh, you're in page one.
Oh.
I know, then I can.
It's smooth. I don't, doesn't matter.
Should be pretty easy.
Yes.
So I need to buy donuts again?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna bring out a binder. It's a binder. I was like,
No, I told her I can have them.